to start?
1 second, the thing is still spinning.
Did I surprise you? We're good? Okay, let's call to order the August 5th, 2019 special town meeting, which is on the fiscal budget 2019-20. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bessler,
Here.
Mayor Cos,
Here.
Commissioner DeHassett,
Present.
Commissioner Herbert. Here. Vice Mayor Magruder.
Here. Let's rise for the pledge. I'd just like to start with a moment of silence for the people in El Paso and Dayton. I assume everyone's been following her on the news. Okay. Okay, usually we do public comment first. How do the commissioners feel about that? Would it be better if we educated everyone to our thoughts and then let them comment on it, or do you want to hear the thoughts first?
Well, I think so, because the last meeting we had a big deficit, and now it's kind of going away, so. you know,
Right, so
They
I
might
think
be arguing about all the stuff we talked about before.
Correct.
Which we're
That's
gonna
my
change.
thinking.
Right, everything's
a lot of
changed.
stuff,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so let's start. Tracy, can you explain to us what has happened? And first, I'd like to congratulate the police chief who brought in the Briney contract for us.
Okay, so the changes that you see in your package are in red, and the budget that is presented to you now is keeping with the 5.35 mill rate that we had last year. And it reduces the amount needed from reserves to $264,405. And that is, if you look back years past, that is keeping in line with what has been done in years past.
Maybe you could read out, Tracy, the reserves that were put back over the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay, so in 2016, we said that we were going to need 286,650 from reserves. However, by the end of the fiscal year, we actually put back 450,818 into reserves. The year after that, we said we would need 266,581 from reserves to balance the budget. We ended up putting back 465,730. 2018, we said we would only need 25,683, and we put back 91,875.
Thank you, Tracy.
And the reason why we're getting closer and closer into budgeting now is we changed from the 97% ad valorem percentage to the 98.5. So we're getting closer and closer.
Right.
So for fiscal year 2019, I know that we're not completely finished, but what are we on track to return to reserves?
I'm thinking we can put at least 25,000 back, if not more, depending on what we can complete by September 30th.
And I actually went through this with Tracy Christine. That is an incredibly low estimate, 25,000.
Yeah, it is low, but
you're
we're
being
just
safe,
being
which is
cautious right
right.
now.
Right.
We're spending a lot of money on the hydrants and everything right now.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess the big discussion is the items on the budget. When we get to the public comment part, if anybody went through the 25 odd items and there's something they would like to discuss, we can do that. Actually, come to think of it, we should ask for that comment first, just in case, because that would impact the amount of money that we need. So is there any public comment At the end of the budget package, you'll see 25 various items that we voted on either to spend money on or to not spend money on. Such things as we nixed the police vehicle, we agreed to roughly $360,000 in drainage across town. We put 10,000 into various beautification projects. We started out with a $700,000 deficit, just so you understand. And we did everything in our power to get it down as low as possible, which is how we ended up at the 264. So any public comment on anything that was approved or not approved? Yes, Martin?
Afternoon. Martin Wiescherleck, 5 Engel Drive. Very quick one. I unfortunately wasn't at the last meeting where this whole police camera thing got nixed. I strongly urge you to reconsider this. I strongly urge you to. I've been reading more and more into this, and it becomes a thing for the police department to actually have evidence in their hand where they can say, look, listen, this is not a he said, she said, this is what it is. And you see more and more people filming the police on police stops where they're videotaping. It becomes a one-sided thing, because if it goes that proves that that person was actually attacking the officer has no recourse of saying, hey, it was the opposite way. Have it in your power to have video evidence of every single thing that happens in this town, for the police department's sake and for the residents' sake, same way. I strongly urge you to reconsider that.
Thank you, Martin. Just so everyone understands, it's a very tight budget year. The cameras cost tens of thousands of dollars. And also there's, I think it's $20,000 a year in annual fees. So what we did, so we have some unexpected expenses that slammed us. We're gonna postpone that discussion till next budget cycle.
We had actually, we'll take public comment.
Yes.
Zoanne Hennigan, 91 Island Drive South. I would just like to ditto what Martin said. I absolutely think, in support of our town, in support of our residents, in support of our police department, in support of any potential litigation, I absolutely think we need to take the money to invest in the body cameras.
Thanks. Christine?
Christine Schulte at 7 Adams Road. I was just, of course, I don't have the updated numbers that you all have, right? But as of the end of June, we knew, some of the residents that were here, that we had approved 19 out of 26 capital projects. Has that changed at all? And let's see, the total of that, the cost of all those projects came to $516,350. Are we around those numbers, or has everything changed? $500,000 and 490,000, almost 491,000 was coming from reserves. I was just wondering.
No, we're
Where
down.
No, way down.
We're way down, which is a great thing. We need good news, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so the deficit at this point is how much?
264,000.
264,000, which is awesome, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, a bit of good news, trivia, kind of trivia, but I wanted to thank the police officers again. Yesterday, we had the septic alarm of the condo north of Adams Road blast us for an hour and a half. Of course, at the beginning, I knew what it was. I checked with our maintenance guy to make sure I didn't screw up, right? It's not the first time it happens. I can just imagine if all the condos in town would have the same problem, it would be a nightmare, right? So our maintenance guy told us, Christine, it's the alarm of Ocean I forget the names of all these
Village.
places. Yeah, okay, right, yeah, and we know who the maintenance manager is there. So I call up the nice
No,
people.
you're Ocean Walk, actually.
Ocean Walk, okay. I call up the nice people, right? The nice ladies that talk to Danielle, and I said, this is what's happening. It's Sunday afternoon. So-and-so is, manager of this compound, please start calling because this is a nightmare, right? Well, it took, then I called back later because it wasn't stopping. And she mentioned that they had called the two contacts, apparently the service that takes care of that, and plus the other person, and nobody was at home. But it stopped an hour and a half later. Most of the condos in town have something like that is so darn loud. And how fast are they taking care of that for the neighbors around them, I was wondering, because this has happened
I think you'd
several
want it
times.
loud.
Pardon me?
I think you'd want it loud.
But
The
it's,
septic and a whole development was crashing.
it's screeching, and I was told that the reason by our maintenance guy was that we had too much rain and therefore the alarm went off. Well, I mean, the people in that compound should have sort of had a plan, up front, who's gonna, shut off that system, right? Yeah, but I appreciate the help, because what else could you do but send a police officer and, to verify that was the thing, that was happening, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, why don't we move to Commissioner Bessler's sheet now, if you want to explain this to us?
Sure. What I had done that's it? They're gonna, there we go. What I had done in the beginning, like, Mayor Kaz said that we had a large deficit, it was about $550,000. And we all seemed to want to go into taking the reserves. But I kind of thought, well, maybe we should raise taxes, and then Don even suggested maybe do a combination of the two. So I started putting this together. So now it's kind of outdated. You've got new numbers in it, but I'm going to change my mind. Since the deficit's only $264,000, I really don't believe we need to raise taxes at all. So I had put the pros and the cons of raising taxes, rating the reserves, and looked at what an average $1 million house would cost. That's, I think, a little bit further down. I mean, you can read the pros and cons later. I guess we should really give these guys a handout, but, after the meeting if you want it. So basically, what it was going to do was, if we went one extra mil, we'd pull in about $104,000, and two would just double that, $208,000. But when I had done the schedule, Tracy even mentioned, well, you're really not telling what the real increase is. I was telling the increase of if we wanted to just add to the mill rate. But the taxpayers, the average taxpayer with $1 million house, which is about the average in this town, would actually have the first increase of $161 already. So that, if you're the average house in Ocean Ridge, your taxes are going to go up next year $161. Not because of us, just because your houses have all gone up in value by 6.32%, so your taxes are going to go up by that. So the mill rate adding of another $104 a year with the 0.1 would just add your to the taxes again of $104 or $208 if we went the whole thing. But that, I thought, was needed when we had the raid reserves of over $500,000. I didn't think we should raise that, take that kind of money out of the reserves. It's basically 10% of what we have in the reserves. So that was basically my original suggestion, and I don't know if you want to go into that now.
No,
but,
the only thing I think needs to be thrown in the calculation is the figure of 5.09, the rollback rate. You're
Well,
just,
that's the $161.
but is that off the 5.09, 2535,
Yes.
2545?
Yes.
See, my math disagrees.
Oh, okay.
And if you just do a simple calculation, the average sale in 2018 up to February 2019 in Ocean Ridge is $1 million, the sale, right?
Okay.
And there are some higher and some lower. According to Trulio, the average value in here, is $1 million, right? So if you take, how do I do this math? If you take 100, I used 103, I didn't know it had gone to 104. If you take $104,000 for every mill increase, right? And you divide it by 1,500 homes in Ocean Ridge, you get $68 now, increase. So if you take 68 and go from 5.09, let's call it 510 to make math easy, right? So every tenth you go up, right, 515, 525, 530, you've already gone up close to $200 before we even contemplate any increases beyond that.
Yeah, but we got $160, so you're saying $160 wrong by $40?
It's off by a bit, and then
Oh,
if you
by
multiply,
$40?
you keep on going out, you see what I mean, it keeps on increasing.
Well, no, well, yeah, but what I'm suggesting, basically, I used the 160 off of Tracy's calculation.
Yeah.
So from the 160, I said 0.1 mil would be $104. Now, you're saying it should be $58?
No, what I'm saying is, or if you want to do that method, we gotta start at 5.09,
Okay.
right? And that's the rollback rate. And as far as I know, for every tenth, you're absolutely right, call it $100, right? So if you go from 5.09 to 5.35, you've,
2/10.
right.
All right, so 200 instead of 160? I don't, do you want to explain that, you?
Yeah. It's really hard to explain. It's
And if
really
you-
difficult.
There's additional math that you have to take into account, which is the county, the schools, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, we're not the
Yeah,
only.
there's so
Well,
many
that's the
factors.
footnotes, that's footnote
Right,
number
and if you get into that,
5.
you end up, it's not costing hundreds of dollars, it's gonna cost some people thousands of dollars.
Well, not the
If we
$1 million
raise.
house, but you're right, the $10 million house, the $5 million house, sure, it'll cost thousands.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Phil, for the math. What do you wanna do? You wanna discuss the mill rate now?
You should take public comment, I think, before you even discuss it, just to see what the public feels.
Okay. Public comment?
So our reserve, what we have in reserves is like 4.5, is that
It's
correct?
4.8,
4.8, that's even better.
I think.
Yes.
I don't think $264,000 warrants a tax increase. I mean, I think 4.8, that's, I can't do the percentage in my head.
Tracy, wasn't it
5%.
67%?
It's 63% right now. 63% of the annual budget we have in reserves.
Right, but the 264, the percentage of
It's in
that
there.
of
It's good.
reserves,
Can
is
you
it up
flip
there?
down?
What's it
Yeah.
take us to,
Go-
58?
Go down.
It takes
Like-
us to
well, I'm sorry,
58
go up,
in
go
your
up.
calculation.
Which is well above the
58.
45 or whatever that the
Right
auditor
there, it's
recommended, right?
58%.
Yes.
You'd go from 63 to 58%.
I don't know how you justify it. That's my opinion.
Any other questions? Yeah.
George Lettis, president of Colonial Ridge Club. Tracy, on the fire hydrant repair, that was an unanticipated
Correct.
expense. How much was that?
We're spending $100,000 this year, and then we're proposing to spend $100,000 next year.
And originally, that was not in the budget, obviously, from a repair
Correct.
standpoint.
We had $30,000 in the budget for water line and hydrant repair.
Okay. Where did that come from, the repairs?
Contingency.
The budget, the active budget.
Okay. So that came from another line item?
Line item,
Okay.
correct.
Would you not consider taking some of the reserves and replenish that line item, since it was an
We
unanticipated?
do every year. We
Well, that
do
was an
every-
unanticipated expense, though,
Correct.
this year.
Yes. Yes,
Would you-
every year reserves go back into the town funds.
Okay.
Based on, you know, if we have employee turnover, things like
Right.
that, and give us money back in the budget
So
every year.
you're budgeting under normal circumstances this year versus the unanticipated one?
Correct.
Okay, all right, that
Yeah,
was my.
by the way, you're just spot on in that analysis. We
Right.
are spending $100,000 right now.
Right.
Which if we had maintained the hydrants, is unbeknownst to us, well, let's not get into the fault. So we're spending $100,000 that would be going into reserves right now.
Okay,
And then we have another $100,000 we're spending next year. in a perfect world, we would have used 200,000 of reserve money to do that.
Right.
But it's being pulled out of the active budget, which is causing us to be up over, what, the 264
Right.
next year.
That's what I was curious about as far as where the monies were going and where they came from.
Right, so
Okay.
by us pulling out of reserve, we're kind of accomplishing what you're asking.
Okay, thanks,
precisely.
appreciate it.
That's great.
That's why we were only looking at about $25,000 going back into the reserves right now. Is that
Correct.
right?
At well,
Correct.
minimum.
I think you got that.
Betty?
I'm just a little confused. How do you come up with all these figures between those that are grandfathered and those that aren't grandfathered?
I know what you mean.
Yeah, well, because houses are grandfathered across the board, and the taxes could only increase by 3%.
Yeah,
Whereas the others, does all of that come with the figures that the state sends you and the county sends you?
Yes, the county
The
sends
county
us the
takes care of it
valuation
for us.
numbers.
Okay,
if we had to
so
do it
that-
ourselves, we'd be here
Yes.
till Christmas.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yep.
Okay,
Well, just so you know, what I mentioned to Tracy is that's the difference between our 160 and our 200. You're saying everybody can go up by those percentages, but they can't because they're grandfathered in, Betty's 3%. So you can't
right,
just
but
say
we
everybody got a
can't,
6%
that's
increase.
beyond our abilities
Yes,
to take
exactly.
into account. We know what number we have to achieve, and the county's told us what those values
Oh,
are.
right, but Tracy did it, and that's how she got her 160, but you did it kind of a different way, and you got your 200, so.
And I got another way where
You
it
get
goes
another one,
higher.
yeah.
Okay, so commission discussion on the millage rate. I'm a fan of leaving it at 5.35. I think the fire hydrants, if we had spent $20,000 a year, every year since 2009, maintaining them, we wouldn't be being socked with a $200,000 ticket item. And I would think if we had known this was coming, we would have had it in reserve, pulled it from reserve.
So just a question. If we discuss and go forward with mill rate, does that preclude us from looking at things that we had considered bringing back to the table if we had won the Briney contract or not?
You would want to discuss that first and then mill rate second.
Okay.
Well, that's a totally different ballgame. We've already voted on the various items, right?
You have, but you can bring them back up at any time. And
What
this
would
is
you
your
like?
this is kind of your last chance though, because you're going to be presenting your budget to the public for a public hearing at the September 9th meeting. So you really need to nail down your mill rate because you're gonna be setting your proposed mill rate September 9th and you can't go up after that. You can only come down.
Gotcha. Well, I had combined all three of my budget binders, and on each number 13 where we talked about camera systems, the last one that I had was that it was under consideration when a motion was made that it would be brought back up if the Briney contract were awarded in our favor. So I am putting that out there. I don't know how to put that out there for discussion. Obviously,
Well, just to clarify, at the last meeting, it was not approved.
I understand that, but it was, when the motion was made, it was with the consideration that it would be brought back up for discussion if the Briney contract were awarded.
Well, can I make a suggestion? Can we have Hal make another presentation and see how he feels, and we can kind of dissect what he has to say?
We kind of did this, but would you like to say something?
As quickly and as concisely as I can be, I have not changed my opinion. I believe that the body camera program is a worthwhile investment for the town. I understand the budgetary constraints that you're under, and unfortunately will defer to you.
Well, so there's no change with the Briney Breeze contract where you have more people to police now and people that you don't even know at this point? And do they have different problems than Ocean Ridge has? Because they
Briney
have-
Breezes in our community we have similar concerns. I believe that's why we were probably awarded the contract over another city. We're more similar than dissimilar. The body camera program is not directed at our residents, is not directed at our community necessarily. It's directed at all law enforcement interactions with anyone that we come into contact with. There are pros and cons to having any technological advancement type solutions in place. I believe that I've explained some of them. In my opinion, as your chief, it is a worthwhile project to go forward with at this time.
And are we still looking at $20,000 commitment for the initial cost and then a reoccurring annual cost of $12,000?
That was my research showed me that that was the most cost-efficient way to do the program for the town of Ocean Ridge, rather than doing an outright purchase. And then if technology changes or it breaks, we're on the hook for it. It gives us a longer lasting program for probably the same cost as we would incur if we did it by purchasing the technology and then having to pay for the backbone, as they say, the storage solution, the redactions and things like that. There are other companies out there that are beginning to do this same style program, other than the two that I originally found. If you chose to go forward with the program before we jumped on it, we will go through that exercise again. Some of the companies that we looked at in consideration of this project have already been sold off to larger companies. So that changes the dynamic. As all of you know, I present you with recommendations. By the time we get to this point, they're 8 months old. And we continue to look at them. That's just the way government budget goes, you know that. So hopefully with advances, we can get it at a better rate, just like anything else that we buy. I can't guarantee you that. Like I said, one of the companies I know has been bought out by a much larger company in hopes of them taking a market share from somebody else.
One of the interesting things that I heard Boynton in their presentation in regards to the Briney contract was they were very proud of their body camera system, and they said it made the officers accountable. So it really had very little to do with the residents themselves. It was more about holding the officers accountable. And that's kind of it was an interesting way to consider it that I hadn't quite thought about in the past.
My experience with cameras on officers comes from the original installation of cameras in vehicles. So many years ago, I did a project instituting a in-car video camera system at another agency, and it proved itself within the first 3 or 4 weeks. It saved the city a large amount of money on a claim against an officer. It saved an officer's career. It served to show that good officers are good officers whether they're on camera, and those that are questionable even if they're on camera, and helps us to make better personnel decisions and to make sure that the culture of the organization that you desire and that I desire exists.
Well, based on what I've heard from the citizens and what I've just heard from Christine and what I've heard from the chief, and now that we have the Briney Breezes contract, I would like to move that we put the body cameras back on the budget for this year, contingent upon, once that's approved, that the chief would come before the commission and explain to us what the rules are regarding when the body camera goes on and when it goes off, so that all the citizens are aware of how that would operate.
Can I just put an overall point on this? We were $500,000 over budget. We were hoping, keeping our fingers crossed, that we would get the Briney contract. Which if we didn't get the Briney contract, we would have to be doing some kind of combination of reserves and raising taxes. So,
I think we need a second before we open for discussion on an active
second.
motion.
I'll second.
Go ahead.
okay, so to continue my overall point. So now what we're doing is we're saying we got the Briney money, let's start spending that, which wasn't the point of getting the Briney money. And on the cameras, we went through this discussion, we can gladly take it to another vote. We went through this whole discussion last time, but I don't think that discussion should be predicated upon we suddenly have $180,000. Because that $180,000 is actually getting us out of HARC. It's not like free money that we can spend.
But if you will, Tracy just went through how much money out of, that went back into the reserves each year. And so we're looking at, what, $264,000 with another 20 on it, so that's 284.
No. Tracy can only guarantee us $25,000.
That's this year.
Right.
This year, but in previous years.
Right. Before we
It's
raised the mill
been-
rate from, our math rate from 97.5 from 97 to 98.5. So right now, when we calculate, instead of using 97% of the tax monies going to come in, we use 98.5, which is more accurate. So
Yes.
therefore, we don't have so much leftover money to put in reserves at the end of the budget year.
I think when we were discussing this, the object of being so tight on the budget was one of the main reasons that we backed off from it. But overall, I don't see it as spending that Briney money carelessly. That was something I think that we were all thinking very seriously about doing and wanting to do. And if we have the option to possibly go forward with this without squeezing us the way it was going to squeeze us, that's worth reconsidering.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like an insurance policy. I think in the long run, we're gonna save it on one case. Because if you got the proof that that person can't sue you, because I've won a lot of cases where it cost me $1 million, and I
Yeah.
won. And it's a shame, you know, because you can't sue the guy that sued you.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm against body cameras on principle, as everyone already knows. I think it destroys the community feel for Ocean Ridge. We're not Boynton Beach. I can understand why Boynton Beach would need cameras. They have a lot of violent crimes. And I can understand why the police chief of Boynton would say at a Briney presentation that it holds the officers accountable. He was trying to win a contract. What do you think he'd say to the residents? I think that the way our community policing works and the relationship between the officers and the community does not require body cameras to facilitate that, and I think it actually damages it. When is the camera on, when it's off? The chief described at the last meeting I don't want to call it confusion because that's too strong a word, but the times when it's on, the times when it's off can be triggered by anything from motion to sound to a call on a radio. I just think it destroys the fabric of Ocean Ridge and the reason we all moved here. So that's my feeling on the matter.
So Don, with your motion, would it allow us to have the opportunity to have the chief present kind of plan A, B, C, and D as to when the cameras would be triggered? Because I think that's an important thing for us to understand.
That's my motion.
Okay.
We would approve or disapprove the purchase of the body cameras for this year. And then contingent upon that vote, if it's favorable, then at the next meeting, the chief would come back with a proposal to the commission and before the citizens on how the body cameras would function as far as when they went on and when they went off.
Okay.
And I think there's some state rules that regulate that also, from what I understand. But I think it's important that everybody understands that we have body cameras and how they work, or when they work.
What do you want to do? Any
So how
more
do we go
public
forward?
comment on it?
Any more public comment?
Clara?
Clara, excuse me, Clara Caldwell, 48 Spanish River Drive. My only comment is that we won the Briney Breezes contract without the body cameras. And is that not indicative of the fact that we have this camaraderie with our police force and we have a different ambience between our community and the police versus Boynton Beach or Chicago or any other community like that?
I agree. Yes, Betty?
The flip side of that coin is we're not just dealing with Ocean Ridge and Briny Breezes. Do you have any idea what the makeup of Boynton Beach is now and what they have found in Boynton Beach? And they come to the park over here. You have different ones going to the park up there. Our police have to stop them. I see them stopping them on the way in and out all the time. And several weeks ago, I watched them stop it, and all of a sudden there were about 4 police cars there, and people kept feeding in, and the police, they handled it beautifully. But it could have turned into a very bad situation, and if they'd been able to film it, there wouldn't be any question if any one of those people sort of got out of hand.
Any other comments? So, you want to take a vote?
Sure.
So we're going back to the body cam issue. All those, well, here, Don, why don't you read exactly what you want the chief to do so we know exactly what we're voting on.
I move that we approve the body cameras for the fiscal year 19 and starting in October, or 19 of October this year for the 20 budget, and that the chief would come back to the commission with one or two suggestions on how, or I guess suggestions on how the body cameras would function so that the commission could weigh in with their opinions.
And also at the same price level, because
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
if the chief is saying it
$20,000.
might change.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those not opposed, nay. Okay, any other items? Christine, while you're on a spending spree? I'm kidding.
Oh, nope, you can come up with something.
No other items? Public? Nope. All right. All right, so at this point,
You have a couple more items to vote on.
right, I'm wondering if we should, you want to vote on the capital, or you want to go to point number A here on the agenda? I'm lost where you're at,
I think you already did that citizen input on the mill rate, unless anybody wants to.
Right, but I don't
Yeah.
understand what you're referring to on the,
We have a couple more items. We have to talk about dispatcher salary
Well, that's what I was
increases
getting
and
at, but
salary. Yeah,
that's exactly what I
So-
meant.
whichever
So go
item you
ahead.
want to take up next.
We have some, an update on the dispatcher situation in town, which directly affects the budget. Tracy?
Okay, so over the past year, the commission has increased the salaries of most of its employees due to several factors, such as the PBA contract negotiations, the salary study results, and changes in personnel for the administration and the building departments. The only employees that have not received a salary increase as of this time are the dispatchers due to some pending union negotiations. But as of this current week, I received official notification that PERC denied the union application. And at the dispatch unit's request, they will not be working with PBA to consolidate a union into the police unit. So I'm recommending at this time that all dispatchers receive a raise of salary in the amount of $5,388 effective immediately in order to be on par with this salary study that we did.
And you did the math to tell us how much that cost during this fiscal, right?
Yes, I did. And also, it was already included in your budget documents for FY20, and that is included in the amount that I gave you earlier on what was needed from reserves.
Just a little history here. How long ago was it? Now it'd be 4 or 5 years ago? The dispatchers were promised an increase, and they got 1/3 of that increase for whatever reasons. It doesn't matter now, it's in the past. So this is simply catching them up to what was promised them 3 years ago. And through various circumstances didn't occur. So it's very unfair to them. So that's why we're attempting to even the playing field now. And there's also turnover in that department, which we'd like to stop. And also, Briny Breezes, another reason they came to us is they had a 16-minute wait on a call into Boynton, which Boynton really job explaining. And the chief, God bless him, you know, said he'd be there in 3 minutes. So now you're stuck with that.
3 for emergency, 5.
And that's because their calls will come into our dispatch. Okay.
If you have public comment.
Public comment?
Does everybody know what the base salary is for a dispatcher?
Yes, we did salary studies.
We're way behind, Christine.
No, I don't quibble on that, but what is their base salary before the increase?
$37,112.
Okay, all right, thank you. It's good to know, you know, what
Yeah.
percentage
And-
we're,
Right, we're not
Listen.
excelling, going above fellow communities, we're
Yeah.
catching up to the tail end
Yeah.
of those.
we don't want
communities.
a revolving door of employees. It's a
Definitely.
good thing.
And we have
Thank
it
you.
now, so we want to try to
Right.
cure that.
Okay.
Okay, any other public discussion? Any commissioner discussion on this? Okay, somebody want to make a motion to raise the salaries effective immediately, that would be today, of each dispatcher by $5,388 annually?
I'll
I'll
make
make-
that motion.
Go ahead. Feel free. Okay, I'll make the motion that the dispatchers receive a raise in salary of $5,388 effective immediately.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, Carla.
Thank you.
Can I thank you all?
Thank you.
On behalf of the 4 ladies that are working up there today.
By the way, I kind of brushed over it. When the chief was doing Brian Breezes, what we were up against was Boynton came in with a PowerPoint 25-page flip chart,
Half hour.
right? And he was going through every last thing they could do. They had boats, they have zodiacs, they have air, they have this, they have that, which, it just showed they were out of touch with Brian Breezes because the Brian Breeze residents started glazing over. All of the Brian Breezes residents want, and the chief realized this, and he did a great, short verbal presentation. They don't want trespassing, and they don't want parking on their property. And the chief hit that out of the park, and did a fantastic job for us, which is why the vote actually was 4-0. There's one commissioner missing. But it turned out to be 3-1 because one of the commissioners thought that he was voting no to Boynton. So the legal vote was 3-1 because the gentleman got confused. So congrats again, Chief. Okay, back to the millage rate?
Nope, one more thing. We need to talk about and hopefully adopt the proposed salary range chart. We have skipped over it every meeting, so this is kind of like the last meeting for the budget that we need to take this up. So you
So-
have, under your personnel tab of your book, you have the Town of Ocean Ridge proposed salary ranges for FY20. We will need a motion and a second to adopt this. However, before you do that, we have to,
Flash flood warning in area till 5:45 PM. Avoid flooded areas. You're not getting home.
We're all
Clara.
on the notifications.
Uber Eats.
That's how we get them to stay to the commission.
So by the way, was that wasn't Civic Ready, was what was that?
That alert is the iPause national alert that you've opted in on your cell phone from
Code
the
Red?
National Weather Service.
That's not what I-
And I have for
A fee.
donation to the police department, an umbrella.
I'm gonna auction mine.
So Tracy, this is one of
Yes.
the things that we had discussed in our staff meeting.
Yes.
In regards to these proposed salary ranges, there was a couple of notations at the bottom
Yes, you need to
That-
pick one.
that we needed to pick, and I think that that is probably more of a discussion point than necessarily the minimum and the maximum salaries,
Correct.
because those are based on,
The
Well, I
salary
do have one
surveys.
question, though. You have town manager minimum of 125, and we're only paying 106 at the
Yes, so what I
time, so.
explained in another commissioner meeting, we had staff meetings this week, is you're setting this based on the salary surveys and what the market adjustments are. If you can get another town manager in for a contract that's less than that, then you can do it. You don't have to go by what is set here.
Okay.
Okay, this is basically what the market will bear.
So one of the things on these options 1 through 4, for the folks in the audience, it talked about if you hit your maximum salary range, what would then happen year after year after year? And the first was, they would receive a 1.5 raise annually. The second option was a 2.2% raise annually. The third option would be a 2.5% annual. And then option 4 would be if they, the employee's maximum salary would never increase, however, the employee would receive either, and this is me, I'm adding this in, a cost of living or up to an X amount stipend. And what that does is, obviously, it's almost like a bonus situation, so it doesn't affect all your other benefits along with it, whether it be the retirement or, I guess, your health.
It also
and
doesn't
other things.
roll.
And it doesn't continue to roll, so.
Correct.
I like option 4 the best. I'd like to not say that that they automatically receive 5% and that's it. I'd like to consider maybe a cost of living or up to 5%, but I wouldn't feel comfortable just saying it's a flat 5%. So.
Any other commissioner comments and last for public?
Well, isn't 5% more than most people get? I understand it's
That's
not.
right.
That's
It
what
needs
she
to
said.
be-
So I say up to, yeah.
Okay.
Because remember, they've topped out.
And that's gonna also depend on what the commission will give that particular year in the budget too. So this is not set in stone, it's not, you're just gonna receive 5%, it's gonna be based on budgeted amounts too, so we can make that notation here as
So,
well.
just out of curiosity, do we have a lot of employees that are towards this maximum end?
You have 2, and what my suggestion would be is that you grandfather those 2 because they're under a contract right now. So you really don't want to do anything that's gonna change them because they're under contract.
How much longer on the contract?
2 years left, 2.5.
So there are 2 employees in the police department that are a member of the police department's bargaining unit who are currently above the recommended maximum salary because of how we've done salaries in the past. Those 2 employees are eligible for up to a 5% increase next fiscal year and a 5% increase the year after that by contract. So I think what the manager is trying to say is that we should consider that contract is in place and allow that to continue. My recommendation would be that those are options for people who reach that after the point that you decide to adopt a salary range chart, and that those 2 are anomalies. So in 3 years, or as other employees reach that top out, is when you would be considering this, because I don't believe that it's going to affect the members of the police bargaining unit because they have a contract for 2 more years. It may, and I haven't looked at the numbers, and perhaps you can help me. There may be employees within the town that are not a member of that bargaining unit that would be affected by this in less than 2 years, which is when you would consider it for those particular employees.
But don't forget too that this is setting your salary ranges now. You have to look at it in years ahead too, because the market numbers are gonna adjust upward.
And you may want to annually review salaries to see if our market value is correct, whether it's gone up or gone down for that fact.
At the very least, every 2 to 3 years.
The 5% increase, is that an up to 5% in their contract, or is it a kind of a set
So
5%?
for this fiscal
up
year,
to.
it was set at a 3%, and for the next 2, it was set at up to 5% based
Up to.
upon their,
Yes.
based upon their evaluation,
Okay.
and the evaluation is part of their contract agreement also, so.
If we were to put this into place and then in 2 years, another contract is negotiated, would we be able to use this figure in the new contract?
You can use this as a basis for negotiating your contract.
But why would the other side feel this as a teeth? We started out with good intentions here. I'm just wondering if we're hog-tying ourselves into a situation where if we have a less qualified candidate or an overqualified candidate, we can't deal effectively with those two individuals. You know what I'm saying?
I don't believe that that's part of this salary range discussion. I believe that the salary range discussion is designed so that you as a commission can be good stewards of the public's money and make sure that we are paying what is appropriate for any position, and that we are not overpaying,
Right, that's where we're concerned,
Or-
we're talking out.
or for
Or
the fact that we're
underpaying.
underpaying and not getting qualified people.
Right.
It clearly sets the stage to say, this is what this position bears. You, as Tracy alluded to in the manager's discussion, if someone comes in here and agrees to work for you for $3 a year, take them up on it.
Right.
And negotiate their contract with them. This basically says, this is what the town believes this particular job description
His worth.
warrants, and based upon experience, training, and longevity, we believe that you should be learning and progressing, and we're not sticking here. But it's unrealistic to say that there's no finite end to a salary description just because someone sticks around. The only issue, as I say, is that you've negotiated part of this already with a certain group, and you may wish to consider these top-out issues based upon what others may come in.
That was our original intention, wasn't it? Our original thrust was the top-out problem. We realized that, well, you realized, you put together the chart, that perhaps our town wasn't paying employees as much as neighboring towns, but we are Ocean Ridge after all.
Right.
So,
Sure.
you can't, it was difficult to compare apples to apples. But our big concern was that there were people topping out, and we were, by tradition, just gonna keep on throwing them into the same pool.
Our
So-
biggest concern was the minimum salaries, because we were
Right,
paying
right.
way
Well,
too
but
much.
we-
Underpaid.
Take care of that.
But while we look at the low, we also should look at the max too. You don't want to be paying an astronomical
Right.
amount for a position.
Right, it's a
Right,
basic
because we
survey.
agreed to the floors in the various departments.
We had a discussion like this many, many years ago, which led us to doing away with a step plan for police, fire, and general employees. That's when we introduced the merit-based 0 to 5% rather than a 5% step. At one point in time, the town did have a salary range. This was the starting salary. If you had 3 or more years' experience in the position plus the certifications, the department head, regardless, was authorized to bring you in at 5% above that minimum. You then got a specific raise every year based upon your longevity. And at a particular point in time, I believe it was 8 years, you reached a maximum salary level unless the commission adjusted it, those salary levels as a cost of living or an across-the-board raise. We did away with that, so that's when we did away with a salary range. And we had a very undefined, here was your minimum, there is no maximum.
So as I understand it, this is a proposed salary ranges for fiscal year 20.
Correct.
And then, so in next year, you would come back with another proposal, or?
It might stay the same, but
It might
yes.
stay the same, up, down, whatever,
Yes,
with option 4 stating up to a 5%.
yes. So really, you have to pick an option for
Option,
top
right.
out. You have
Yes,
to,
so-
it's gotta be one or the other.
Zoanne Hennigan, 91 Island Drive South. I think the salary range is absolutely a good idea. From an HR perspective, though, one of the terms that I get a little concerned about is that somebody receives X amount annually. Is it not the case that raises are performance evaluation based?
Correct.
Okay, so even for those officers that are within a contract, and I think I heard you say that based upon their evaluation, they would get a certain percentage of an increase? I mean, it's not just given that you get 3% or 5%, it's based upon your evaluation. If you're, I don't know what the evaluation criteria, outstanding or meets the requirements or whatever, but do we have a range that if you're outstanding, you get X percent, if you're doing an adequate job, you get Y percent, or anything like that?
Yes, it's up to
Yeah, isn't
5%.
that the up to 5%?
So-
Okay.
Right.
So we need to include the words
Yeah, you're
up to
bringing up a
here.
very
Right,
good
right.
point.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
So the way our current evaluation system works is it's based upon a score. And that score is tied to a percentage rate.
Okay,
Okay, so there's three general areas.
mm-hmm,
So generally, a meets expectation employee will receive between 3% and 4%. And someone who goes over and beyond in a couple areas may receive a 5%.
okay,
Anyone who doesn't meet expectations doesn't generally receive a raise.
okay, sounds good. So, yeah, so it's the verbiage that.
Yes.
Right,
Right.
It'll
so,
be cleaned
so
up.
it will
Which we
now
changed.
read, topped out employees' maximum salary never increases. However, employee receives up to 5% stipend annually based on evaluation.
Perfect,
Right.
thank you.
And if each one of these would also have that in it.
Well, you're
You
gonna
pick
pick
one of-
one,
One of the
Yeah,
four,
pick
one of those options.
out
Right,
of,
but
you
we-
have to pick
you
option
need-
1, 2, 3, or 4, not all of them.
Right, I get that, but let's say we vote on option one, right?
Oh, right,
You-
up
you have
to.
to say that.
Receives up to.
That is
right.
correct.
Okay, anybody like to say anything else on the matter?
Can I make a
Anybody wanna
motion?
make a motion?
Sure. Make a motion that we use top out option 4, according to the additional verbiage stated by the town manager, up to based on evaluation,
And to adopt the salary range chart.
and to adopt the salary range chart.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Now
Can
back
we-
to the
can we
millage
do
rate.
millage now?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's start with any public comment on millage. We've kind of already heard it. Okay, any additional commissioner comments? How do we want to do this? You want to say what the options are and get a feel, or,
Make a motion.
all right?
Well, this
Just
isn't
with
the final
caveat.
millage rate, right?
Yeah, this
But it's
is-
up to, right?
This is going to be the mill rate that you set
It's final.
to, nope, not final. So this is gonna be the mill rate that you set today that will go into the documents that you're going to be giving to the public so that they can comment during the public hearing on the 9th. At the meeting on the 9th, you'll be setting your tentative millage rate. Once you do that on the 9th, you can't go up. You can certainly come down before the 23rd, but you cannot go up.
Right, so my point
So this is
is,
still tentative.
like we did last year, we went to the highest, but never hit it, and we went to the regular. So if anything major goes wrong between now and when we get to that last meeting to set the millage rate, why wouldn't we want it the highest, just in case something
But-
major happens?
Let me just comment on that. So, but if you do that, the amount needed from reserve, okay, so you'll set at 5.55, say you've already set your maximum at 5.55.
Correct.
All your numbers here are gonna change. Because we're gonna do 5.55 here.
Right, but then we also keep the other column at 5.35? I thought we
No.
did it last year.
No.
No, we
Whatever you vote on right now is what goes here, and we'll change this whole column.
Last year we treated it as sort of a hard number.
But we didn't use it. We went back to the original, the 5.35.
We went to
Correct.
5.35, but
That's
But I
correct.
thought we saw both columns, we saw a 5.35
We did
next
that
to a 5.55.
the month
Because
previous.
we knew we weren't gonna do the 5.55, but unless something major happened. We didn't wanna put ourselves in a box.
And you still won't, but because you're gonna set your tentative at the next meeting. Now, the tax bills are the proposed, the trim notices that are coming out, because you had set the maximum at 5.55. Those trim notices that are gonna be mailed to the public are gonna have that 5.55 rate on it.
Don't we have kind of a,
Can I ask a question? And I hate to ask this question, but I need some clarification myself. I was under the impression that you set your maximum millage at the last budget meeting.
Correct. And that's what's going on the trim notice.
That's your 5.55.
Correct.
So that's the
Right.
maximum. You cannot go above that.
Correct.
And then at this meeting, we should attempt to set the mill rate that we want to impose upon the public,
Correct.
so that on the September 9th first reading, it is set, and there is no question unless there is an emergency of some sort. And then on the final September 23rd, it is only a formalization process of the second.
Right, you can't go up after the 9th. But right now, you're voting on what you want to present to the public to make public comments on.
Okay, but we
So-
still have the opportunity to go to 5.55 if something major happens.
Yes.
So, yeah, okay, then I agree
so
with the 5.35.
we're gonna treat it as a hard number, but it's not a hard number. Is that
Until the 9th,
Make it
when you
easy for
set it.
everyone. right? Till-
Right.
So
Okay?
you
So-
agreeing to what?
Well, what I'm saying is we let the public see the 5.35, but we still have that max at the 5.55. We don't have to show it to them because,
Well,
You
they're
know,
gonna
something
see it on
they-
the,
they
they'll
got it.
see it on the trim notice anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
They're gonna see that, but
But I think everyone should be on the same page. We're gonna treat whatever number we vote on today as the hard number, so that
Right.
Tracy can finish her budget professionally, and
Right.
we know exactly where we're standing. And then if something happens before the number goes legally hard, we can then swoop in and adjust it.
yes, correct.
okay.
But as far as you were looking for, Commissioner Bessler, you were saying, well, could we have the numbers in a column side by side? But actually, we've got the 5.35 in front of us today. So you still would want to make that other number 5.55, or would you want to look at something like 5.40 or 5.45, which was what we had discussed earlier, something a little bit more realistic, that if we didn't have any changes, but any disasters between now and the next meeting, and we decided that we needed to go to 5.40.
But the math
We could
is,
do that.
But-
the math is right in front of us. We're
Yeah.
264,000 over.
Yes, but
Each-
if you
each
did the
tenth brings us in
5.40, you would
100,000.
be able to see what those numbers were.
It's $50,000, so just
It's
subtract.
how it's gonna affect the total budget, though. She's gonna have to change the
Well-
whole
Well,
sheet.
but you asked me the question, so what I would say is no, I want to see the 5.35. As long as I know if 1/10 something major happens, we can go to 5.55 in an emergency. That's all I'm happy with.
Yes,
I
you're
really
right.
think
That's
we
what
should
we're
stay with the 5.35 because I think we got
I
a reasonable
don't
budget
disagree
at this
with
point.
Would you like to make a motion as such?
Sure, I'll make a motion that the mill rate that we'll present to the public will be 5.35%.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those, who was the second?
Me, Christine?
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Unanimous. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Do you have any other odds and ends that we
No, sir.
lost track of during budget, during these months?
No.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and meeting
See you back
adjourned.
here in 3 hours.
Thank you, Tracy.
A lot of work.
Little break, we didn't make the meeting 5.
I still don't
I
understand.
know.
It's 2:00. 2 hours.
To having the opportunity, because how do you know if you need
Get rid of some of these papers.
the emergency, what emergency, you know, it's different.